All right. I got it. All right. Good evening, everybody. I, David Gerstenhaber, will call the March 7th, 2022 Franklin Township Board of Supervisors workshop meeting to order at 6:59 p.m. or a little bit early. In attendance via Zoom are Vice Chairman Donna D, Supervisors Morris, Johnson, and Dowling. And also in attendance Mark is not in attendance. Also interim Township Manager Jeff Eastburn and Township Secretary Sarah Patent is on the call.
She's not on the call.
Is not on the call. And there are, looks like, one member of the public. Hi, Mary. And can you hit the got it on your screen? Thank you very much. All right, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
for
all.
All right. So now we're going to move to public comment. This public comment can include anything related to the agenda items. We want to give everyone who wishes the opportunity to speak to do so. However, even though a portion of this meeting is being held virtually, you still must state your name, whether you are a resident of the township or a non-resident taxpayer in the township. And if you do not identify yourself, your comments will not be included in the official minutes. Do we have any public comment? Okay, no. Hearing no public comment, let's move on. Donna?
So I'd like to ask the Board of Supervisors, thank you. I'm just seeing my motions. Oh, okay, I'm with you, I'm sorry. I make a motion to approve the Board of Supervisors workshop meeting minutes from February 7th, 2022. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, good, thanks, Dawn. And then any discussion?
My question, I haven't read through it today, but I'm assuming it's the same version. Did we decide, we talked about creating an open space fund, but we didn't decide an amount, did we? If we did, it should be in the minutes.
Yeah, we didn't decide on that. We just discussed it as an option, and we would bring that to an official board meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll have that on the agenda for the next board meeting, since we discussed it at the last workshop meeting.
Okie doke.
Yeah.
Any other discussion?
But I don't know if maybe that should be called out in the minutes, or is that a minor detail that we don't? Do we need to add that to the minutes?
I think if it's an action, we should add it as an action in the minutes, because otherwise, it could just slip by.
Sure. So to be discussed at the subsequent Board of Supervisors meeting.
Right.
Okay.
So then we're not going to. I guess we're not going to approve the minutes, right? We need to.
Can we approve the minutes noting that change?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Is that, Donna, would you like to maybe reread the motion saying, I make a motion with the noted change?
And the noted change is to say to be discussed at the March meeting. Is that? Or
yeah, to be as far as the amount.
Further.
Yeah, just to be finalized at the subsequent March
that's good.
meeting.
I like to be finalized at the March meeting. Okay, great. So I make a motion to approve the Board of Supervisors workshop minutes from February 7th, 2022, noting the addition to the item regarding establishment of open space reserve fund, and that we will finalize that at the March meeting. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any against, say nay. Okay, so the board approves that 5-0. Thank you.
Okay, Nancy.
Okay, I would like to introduce the road discussion. I think, Dave, you were going to talk a little bit about timing, but I would just like to say in 2021, we made some major changes to the road program, in large part thanks to Ron Reagan and Jeff. And since Mary McVeigh's on the call, Mary also helped a lot. Mary and Jeff went up to another township and got best practices. Members of the board talked to other townships locally, and we moved from a 5-year contract, which we had been doing, to annual contracts where we would identify the projects and then bid out each project. We also changed some of our equipment to move from equipment that required 2 passes on a road to equipment wide enough to, where possible, accommodate single pass paving, which allows for less cracks and less bumps and variability. So, I commend everybody on the board, and I hope the public also recognizes that it was a lot of work on a lot of people's parts. And Ron played a very big role in helping us look at best practice. That, I guess I hand it over to Jeff or Dave or
Thanks,
someone.
Nancy. So is Ron on? Is she here?
Ron is on.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
Perfect. So I just wanted to make a couple of mentions about how we have been doing the road project for the last couple of years. So we like to have multiple meetings. The first pass meeting is what we're going to have today, which is this list of roads that you see in front of you, what we want to do. And this is just a discussion, why we're picking these roads, et cetera, et cetera. And then I would also encourage, board members, as you're driving around the next couple of weeks, if you see something that, hey, we might have missed, to come back and say, here's another road, have you considered that? But, we pick March because it's the end of the winter season. Roads that you tend to identify in February as perfectly fine can blow up on you over the winter. We had that happen last year with Schoolhouse Road. It was a solid green road, and using our robotics parlance. And at the end of the winter, it was an emergency fix. So things can pop up. So much of this list, and I'm going to let Ron kind of walk through the roads, is stuff that we identified last year using our robotics system, and we just weren't able to get to. And we're going to get to a bottom line here. A couple of roads, we've taken the paving off for this year, primarily because the price of oil has shot through the roof, and we just can't afford to get everything we want done. So there's some things we're going to do in 2022, things we're going to do in 2023, and that's what we're listed here. So I think that's the framework here. Jeff, do you have anything you want to add as we go?
No, I'm good. I think Ron's on next.
All right, Ron, take her away.
All right. As Dave mentioned, most of these roads are continuation of the paving of a list that we had created last year through a combination of looking at the robotics information that you were able to obtain and some extensive field investigations that we did that included visual inspections and proof rolling, where we actually went out and looked at these roads to see if there was a solid base. And how we determine that is whether or not we're observing any pumping of the asphalt as we do the proof roll with a loaded, generally a tandem or a triaxle dump truck. So you've got a pretty substantial weight rolling over the road. And usually if the sub base is substandard, you'll see a movement in the pavement. And we didn't see a lot of that last year on these roads. And the roads last year, we did include a percentage of the square yardage of the road with an assumption that we would have to do some base repair. And as it turned out last year, we ended up doing a lot less base repair than what we had estimated. So this year, we've kind of taken the opposite approach in that we've assumed that there will be very little, if maybe none, on these roads. And if we do have to add some, we'll have to, we'll leave in a little cushion in the budget that we'll set aside. As Dave mentioned, we are going to try to split the roads up into 2022 projects and 2023 projects. And that's partly based on what we think is the immediate need, but also based on some of the preparatory work that we need to do in order to be ready to pave. So for example, Old Schoolhouse initially was on the list to be done this year, but when we took another look at it, we decided that there was quite a bit of drainage and shoulder work that needed to be done, and that work should be done before you pave it. So we decided that would, since we had to cut back on the budget a little bit, we decided that one would be a good candidate to put off until next year for the paving, but get that shoulder and drainage work done this year. Church Hill Road is one where we're hoping to be able to do a little bit of drainage work. We don't quite have those projects determined yet, but we have an idea of what we want to do, but we think we can get those done and be ready to pave that one. So that we kept on the 2022 schedule. Heather Hills is basically just a subdivision roads that have a lot of cracking. They've been patched a lot over the years. If you go in there, it looks like a big plate of black spaghetti has been dumped onto the roads from all the crack seal work that has been done in the past. But yet when we did the proof roll last year, we did not see any movement. So it's basically just going to be a mill and overlay. We did get a cost as well for doing Petromat and overlay, and it ended up being that the Petromat and overlay was actually more than doing a mill and overlay. And that Petromat, basically, you end up increasing the thickness of the pavement that you have, and then you have an issue with tying into all the driveways. Where when you do the mill and overlay, you end up at the same elevation of cartways, so all the driveways will line up better. And since this is I'm sorry, I'm on Heather Hills. So on Heather Hills, there's a lot of driveways in the subdivision because you have a lot of homes in a subdivision. So I'm sorry, I skipped over Church Hill there. So anyway, Heather Hills would be a mill and overlay of the 3 streets in that subdivision. And we did decide to keep that one on the list for 2022. And I'm sorry, I skipped over Church Hill and started talking about Heather Hills. Church Hill is one where we have the mill and overlay and shoulder and drainage work. That one doesn't need, again, it didn't have much in terms of shoulder or structural problems with the road when we did the proof rolling. Hillcrest Drive is another. I'm sorry.
Yeah, just a clarifying question, because you did the roll test last year, or you're going to do it again this year? Can you just go through the timing of the roll test?
We did proof roll last year and then made our ultimate decision on which roads we would do in 2021. But we did proof roll all of these roads last year, and we did not see much movement on these roads. Right. So at this point, I'm not recommending that we do a proof roll at the beginning of the process. What we would do would be on the roads when we do mill, we will do the proof roll after you've milled the wearing surface on to just confirm that our assumption that there's no base repair needed would be confirmed by proof rolling in. But I'm not recommending that we do a proof. I don't think we need to do a proof roll again before we put these out to bid.
Right, but because I think you feel that once you take off that first layer, you'll have a better sense. It's a better test, right, to see if you need to do anything. Okay.
Yeah,
right,
and so I would recommend that we do it then. And the nice thing about that is that you have a truck there that's been loaded with millings that we can utilize that truck to do the proof roll, and it's a fairly easy step to fit in. So we would do that, after it's milled, but not do it before we do the bid, because I think I'm pretty comfortable that the answer is going to be that there won't need to be much base repair. Hillcrest, again, that's a subdivision mill and overlay, and but that one's not in as bad a shape as Heather Hills. So again, in order to get under the budget, we decided to push that one off until 2023. Parsons Road is a fairly substantially traveled road. We do want to do a mill and overlay there. There's a little bit of drainage work that we need to look into there to determine what needs to be done, but it's not substantial. So we think we can get that done before we would have a paving contractor come in. And then there was a lot of talk last year about oil chip and fog seal. We went around looking for some subdivision roads that had some cracking starting, but it was fairly minor, where we could do sort of a trial run of the oil chip and fog seal. And it's a fairly small, short cul-de-sac road, so it would have generally where you have trouble when you do oil and chip and sealing is where large vehicles turn on that surface. So this one has a cul-de-sac where probably the garbage truck goes in there and makes a big U-turn at the end of the cul-de-sac. So we thought this one would be a good trial to see if we want to try to do more of this in the future. And that's sort of, we're hoping to be able to transition into doing more of this in the future, but we want to make sure we get all the roads that need some structural help, do the mill and overlay first before we, and do a lot of the subdivision roads or some of the better township roads with oil and chip.
So there's two, oh, go ahead.
One thing I wanted to point out, and I do it with the footnote down at the bottom, is that the costs here in this table are prevailing wage paving jobs. They are done using February 1 asphalt cement index pricing. And that number on February was $573. The March number is now out and it's $587. The index when we did the work last year was $461. So it increased over $120 from March last year to March this year. And that translates into the price per ton of 9.5 millimeter wearing jumped from $64.36 a ton to $71.77 a ton. So with the situation with the war in Ukraine, that there's a good chance that this index is going to continue to go up. These prices, about 50% of the costs shown in this table are material costs. And 50% is the cost to have it put down. So if we get a, increase based on that index of say a 10% increase in the price of the ton of material, it will have about a 5% increase in the total price of the job.
So Ron,
yeah.
So this looks excellent. I think it's really helpful to know what could happen. It's not necessarily prioritized in order, but you've shown the roads that you'd like to do this year: Churchill, Heather Hills neighborhood and Hillcrest Drive, Parsons Road, and then maybe the Sunset Circle. So I guess if we could prioritize those so that if it really, the cost really increases, we can push what we need to into next year. So that's comment. I have a couple comments and then I'll let it go. Comment number one, I love the idea about trying to do some chip and seal. I think that's great. Chip and fog. I'm not going to get into the schoolhouse speed bump thing, but I do think that since it's not an issue for this year, it now that we do have a ordinance, we should probably consider applying the ordinance so we can truly be fair to everybody. And then my last comment is, I'm assuming we still own Elbow from where we paved to Appleton. Is that ours or is that another township's? Because that is blown up on the side. I just wanted to make you aware of that if you weren't aware of it.
That's owned by the
I've
state
not-
of Maryland.
Oh,
That
that's
first
Maryland.
portion.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Yep.
All right, so I think, so the priority setting, I think it's a good point. I don't know if we want to do that now or, well, let's do it this way. I think we have some photos and maps to show when we talk about the roads in here somewhere.
It's with the books.
Yeah, it's in here in the book somewhere down here. And I think the other thing I want to talk about before we move on and before I open it for questions from the rest of the board is you'll see two columns under the project heading, 2022 project. We've got a paving column, and then we've got a drainage column. Another way of thinking about the drainage column is stormwater, is basically stormwater management. And so this TBD is going to be under the earmark of stormwater, likely not the speed bumps, but the stormwater piece. And most of that budget is not going to impact this final number. It's going to be coming out of the American Relief Fund, as they've clearly identified stormwater remediation as an opportunity to use stormwater, and all of that is going to get bid out to certified, folks. So we'll have a separate bid package, Jeff, for this work
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
And again, as Ron mentioned, these are all prevailing wage projects. So we have, we're pretty clear. It's going to be, everything's going to be kind of bid out. Likely two contractors, right? I think it's
Correct.
the disposition is pavers pave, stormwater people do stormwater. So we're going to try and keep those things separate. So just so you know what these TBDs are, whatever numbers these are, it's not going to necessarily impact this paving number. This is going to stay, well, other than what Ron just said, this will be roughly where we'll be at.
David, shoulder work, is shoulder work the same as drainage work? Does it go into that?
Yeah, I don't know. Ron, is shoulder work considered stormwater maintenance management?
I think we could include it because it's basically the grading that you would need to do in the shoulder to create a drainage swale, even though we would not necessarily be putting inlets and pipes in. It's still needed in order to safely get the water down onto the road and alongside the road. The one instance that's the worst case is, I don't know how much you drive Old Schoolhouse, but there's a section where it's almost like driving through a canyon. You have almost a vertical wall on both sides, and water is flowing over those embankments and it's eroding onto the cartway. So something to stabilize that bank and get the water safely off the road it's treating a water issue, even though it's more of a grading a shoulder than it is putting in a conveyance.
Right, and you're going to do that this year, so that's good. It all fits. You get that dealt with, because that is pretty dangerous, and then you move into the paving the following year. It's good.
Yeah, I think the only item, Donna, just to kind of get to your point, is the speed humps should probably have their own column, but that would be the only thing in its own column.
Right.
And the reason those are specifically called out, folks, is because to do the mill and overlay, you got to take the speed bumps out.
Right.
And so that's why that line item's there. And then to Nancy's point is we need to discuss whether or not we put them back, and we'll probably talk about using the new policy. So Dawn and Jim, you guys are new to this process. We have time, so ask your questions, or to make sure you're feeling comfortable and clear, and then we can. I don't know if we want to talk about specific roads as we go through, but do you have any?
That's great. Is my sound okay?
Perfect. Sounds great.
Okay, I upped it a little bit, but yes, I'm very familiar with Old Schoolhouse Road. So I went over this a little bit with Jeff before the meeting today. So we went through this, so I felt good about it. But just so we look really professional, it should say shoulder work and drainage work. It's missing an R.
Yeah, see that.
Okay.
And we're gonna throw that in a Chinese cooking utensil. And
I thought it was a new process.
somebody,
Jim, any comments or questions?
Dawn, are you finished?
Yeah, I
Okay.
I went over this with Jeff today and feel real comfortable with it.
Okay, yeah, the only question I have is, this is a hypothetical, but do townships or municipalities ever hedge the cost of commodities, knowing that, commodity prices are going to go up? At least like a ratable program where they would hedge a portion of the price so that they could freeze it in time. I know that Mark would probably be the one to ask that in legal, maybe.
Yeah,
With the-
Jim, I don't know that we would know what that looks like. You're an expert on hedging futures, but I think that's something that you could maybe help us learn about, and that you might want to engage with Mark and Ron over.
Does
Yeah, I
the
can do
township buy the materials?
The way it's handled is we get it through the CoStars program.
Oh, okay.
So it's bid out through the state. So I understand what Jim is saying,
Yeah.
and I can supply him the sheets that I have, but I don't think there's any way of getting around the escalator clause in the state pricing. But I'm happy to share that with you, Jim.
And
Sorry.
I don't know whether Jim knows about the CoStar program, because I learned about that in Harrisburg. But it was very interesting to learn about how that's all, worked through the state.
The state, Jim, bids this material out. They do their own big bid package, and we can piggyback onto that and obtain that same pricing. And then that way it's already approved through PennDOT, and we can give them what I call the recipe sheets for them. And it's a lot smoother, I feel.
Yeah, so all I'm saying, I can make it pretty simple, but we can talk about it more, and I can talk to you about it offline too, Jeff. But if we know, that's the bidding process, and I know this asphalt price is derived from like the oil price going up and probably stone and whatever else is in there. But if we knew about, I'm not talking about the things like Russia invading the Ukraine, but on a normal basis, oil prices probably go up so many % a year, and I can get that data too, or we can look at asphalt, and maybe we can do a percentage of buying oil, and I'm not talking about necessarily. I guess I don't know how we would buy the futures. We'd have to talk about that a little bit more, but all that would be is a separate transaction that locks in a certain cost. And maybe a percentage of what we need every year. It's not as complicated as you might think. It's just how much do we put into this? It's almost like a risk mitigation program, if we wanted to. So maybe I'll talk a little bit more, and we'll come back and talk about it later. We haven't done it yet, but we'll talk about it another time.
Sure, tomorrow, sir, I'll send you the pricing sheets. I just got them, I think, yesterday or the day before.
Okay, and I don't even know if townships and municipalities are precluded from hedging in this way. So I'll try to find that out too.
Thank you.
now the CoStar's pricing and with the asphalt cement index, it works both ways. So if the price goes down, there can be a reduction in the cost. Now, so if everybody kisses and makes up in Ukraine, and we have a windfall of oil coming in or something like that, that index could come down. And
Exactly. You don't want to hedge a future price at the peak.
right.
Then you're-
So, but that that index kind of covers some of that, but that we're locked into that index if we use the co-stars.
Gotcha.
Okay. That's all I had.
All right, thanks, Jim.
Dave,
So-
I think, I don't know if it was Donna or somebody had a question about what if we come up with a shortfall of not having, the bids come in higher than what the money that you have allocated to do this, what would we do? All of these will be bid based on unit prices so that we can, if we wanted to roll back one of the roads a little bit in terms of stopping it at a spot that's a little shorter, making the square yardage a little less, then we could use that to pare the price back a little bit to get it within the budget that we have.
Or we could postpone a road, I would imagine, right? I don't know what the prices are going to do, but if we find out we're running out of money, could we not do one of the roads?
You could not do one of the roads, but then that's probably way more than what you would need to cut back to be under budget.
Gotcha. Okay.
But-
You're saying you just need to kind of shave as opposed to a major.
Yeah, so if, maybe you come in, you stop Churchill Road short of what we say are the starting and stopping points now and shave it back. If you needed to save $25,000, you cut off a fifth of the length of the road and you could achieve that.
Ron, this is Nancy again. I think that's a good option. I also am always looking at our Salton Road, our winter budget, which is not looking like we're going to need to spend most of it. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm sure we're way underspent there. So it may be a place where we can find a little bit of a cushion if we need it.
Yeah,
And
I
Ron-
can work with Melissa over the next day or two and see what our tally is on that. The winter maintenance.
So I think I don't want to kind of belabor this too much. I just want to kind of show on the screen for folks who are watching or who may watch in the future the roads we're talking about. So Old Schoolhouse Road here it has a couple of speed bumps on here. I'm not really sure how many speed bumps we have on here, but it's essentially 4 speed bumps.
There's 4.
And it's roughly between Chesterville Road and Wickerton Road. We have Churchill Road, which is down here, which is just off of Creek Road. And we're going to be doing, I don't think, these aren't the full stretches, I don't believe.
No, it's going to be a probably 70% of that, what you're saying.
And it starts, I think, near Queen Lane and then
Yep.
comes down until in the lower left-hand corner of the picture, the red barn or the red roof there, somewhere in that vicinity is where the other end of it is.
Right.
Because we've worked a lot on Churchill. So does this finish it up, Jeff? Are we finishing up Churchill? Or is there still much more to do?
The roof with the red barn, that would take us past the guide rail section, correct, Ron? Okay. That would allow us to have a huge portion of that done, Donna.
Okay, because we've already done quite a bit. So you
Yep.
would finish. And you said Queen Lane is the area where we just never got to. So I think that's a good choice.
Yep. And between Queen Lane and Creek Road, again, this is the stimulus part of the money. Talking about putting inlet boxes in and possibly inlet boxes in and culvert pipes to help with stormwater.
And then we have Heather Hills, and that's this entire network here of roads. So it's Heather Hills Drive, Highland and Highland Drive, and Glennock, I guess, as well. Glennock as well. So it's 3 roads in Heather Hills. We shorthanded the whole development, but it's interesting driving through here and just seeing the amount of cracks and alligator striping going on in here. So we're trying to get that fixed.
Oh, and we've talked about that numerous times. So I'm glad I know we get on the list and it's like, yeah, it looks bad, but there's other things that look worse. So hopefully this year will finally be a chance to to take them, and get them done. But that's
Yeah, I
good.
mean, I think so. It's when you prioritize, it's tough, right? So when you prioritize a road, and a road like School Hill blows up on you, which is a high traffic, high throughput road system, you have to fix it.
Right,
When in Heather Hills, it's stable,
yeah.
but it's not pretty, and it's going to get worse. So we might as well fix it while we can. And then we've got Hillcrest. So Hillcrest, we're going to bump until 2023. This is a shorter road. Again, it's very similar to Heather Hills, actually, in terms of maintenance needs, I would say. Shorter project. And then what is this?
Parsons.
This is Parsons. Yeah, this Parsons Road. So we have the Cross and Park up here.
So would this be the entire Parsons Road from start to end? Is the project?
It starts at the township line with
Township
London
line.
Britain
Right.
and runs over to about where the label Parsons is, somewhere in that
Okay.
vicinity.
Yeah, so it's this stretch of road right here.
Just after the park. Okay.
Yeah, right, exactly, just after the park. And then I think we're at the last one. So this is Sunset Circle. So this is a very short stretch of road. It's right off of Peacedale here, across the street from the charter school. And I guess because of its length and it's not a very complex road system with not a lot of heavy traffic, it would be a really nice place to get our chip and fog and seal built up there. So
Yeah, because we've never talked about this road, but that's actually why you're doing it, right? It's not in bad shape. It may be a road that by doing this we can extend its life and just see how this process works.
yeah, so exactly right. So when we talked about it last year, and we went through and really learned a lot about the various road improvement options. And what we had heard was this is a really good method. This chip and seal or fog seal method is really good at adding some life to a road, maybe preventing catastrophic failure. But the road itself can't be completely falling apart, right? So it helps prop up with the road system. So when you see the other roads that we picked, all of it is basically milling and resurfacing, which is basically tearing the road up and putting a new road surface on there. This is more about almost putting I don't know what the right word is, but I'm saying a fresh coat of paint on there, a protective seal, something like that, where you're doing some preservation to the already existing road.
Right.
And I think the idea here is, and I don't believe we have the robotics map from last year up here, which is fine. We don't need it. We're really close to having a really completely healthy road system. Now, roads will always blow up and fall apart, but we're really close to getting all of the major repair work done. And so once that's done, we're going to probably be interested in doing some sort of maintenance type work, which will save the township a lot of money. And one option is this fog seal, oil and chip and fog seal approach. It doesn't work on all roads. Some roads you're always going to want to do a full mill and overlay, but so we're still trying to explore that option. And
So Jeff, I have a question for you. Do you remember I can't remember the name of it right now, but do you remember we had a road that we went back to the people that did it and they gave us money because we were afraid it was going to blow up? Do you know what I'm talking about? That
I do indeed, and that is on Ron Reagan and my list to look at. You're talking about Brothers Riding.
That's it. Right. So you haven't checked it out yet? Because I always wonder how it's doing. I know it had some cracks and we had some concerns, but it seemed to be holding its own. So you will check that? Can you check that and then come back and let us know?
We certainly will. It's on our list.
But it's probably not something obvious because you would have picked up on it if it was, right? I would imagine.
I would hope so. But again, Ron and I are going to look at it together. So I feel confident in the list that Ron and I came up with.
Yeah. So what would Brothers Riding likely need if we need to do something there? Is that a?
Well, that's something I want to talk to Ron about, is possibly a candidate for the chip seal and fog, maybe.
Okay.
That's a good idea, Jeff. And I go in there occasionally. I haven't seen any big problems, but that's a good idea.
Yep.
Yeah, but you remember the conversations, we were afraid, and I thought things, I thought some, like in some places there was some problems with the base, and then Jim went back and tried to fix it. I don't know, I just remember that it was.
Yeah, what had happened, Donna, is they had used a different, LTL it wasn't Jim's fault. LTL had recommended a different paving approach where you recycle the old paving. I forget what it's called, and it was less than stellar. So we ended up getting back, I think, about $36,000 from LTL because we paid them very good money for that recommendation. And that is simply for us to, obviously we can spend it where we want, but the idea was as an insurance against that further disintegrating.
Right.
Which it doesn't seem to have done.
I wasn't insinuating it was Jim. Jim was trying to fix
No.
it, but I think some issues with the truck and something. Yeah, it was just a mess. But it sounds like no one's calling us saying the road blew up, so that's good. And Jeff, you're going to take a look at it. So that it just is always in the back of my head. Where is that? Okay, good.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
just one last point on this with Brothers Riding, we noticed dimpling starting to occur in the road. So
Right.
it looked like someone had hit it with a ball peen hammer all over the place. And that's what drew our attention to it originally.
Right. Okay, great.
So
Is the
Oh,
chip
okay.
and seal across the whole road? It's not just the strips like PennDOT does on the like outer, 3 feet of the road, right?
it'll cover the whole road.
Yeah, I would recommend doing the whole road.
Right. Okay. And then I have one other question. Sorry, Dave. One other question. The drainage that we have on the sheet here, is it possible if we don't, because of the price run up of the paving material cost, is it possible that we do some of the drainage work separately and then get to the paving like next year or some other time, or do they really have to be done like simultaneously?
So that's exactly what we're doing with Old Schoolhouse Road. We're going to be doing the stormwater drainage work this year and doing the paving next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not all drainage has to be done at the time of paving.
No. You're setting the table really, and that could just sit there, and then you'll just do the paving when you need to do the paving.
Okay.
So.
Right, Jim, a lot of times when you do a lot of drainage work, like culvert pipes, you're better off waiting so it settles. So we're actually doing the right thing. Even if we had the money, we may, I don't know if Ron, you would tell us, but maybe we would wait anyways just to make sure everything's settled before we did anything. I don't know.
Yeah, the drainage work on Old Schoolhouse would, could be some pipe crossings that you're right. It's nice to have those settle in nice and good before you pave. Most of the drainage work on Churchill will be pipes alongside the road, but there may be a crossing or two there as well, but we'll just have to make sure we compact it and make sure that they do a good job when they do the compaction, which it can be done and hold up fine. You just need to pay real good attention to that compaction work.
Right.
If anybody drives Old Schoolhouse Road consistently, if it rains, it's full of large rocks.
Yeah, there's that cliff, you walk down there, it is really like you're in a channel. So there's some work to be done there that it might be, I think even though it's a financial decision, it's probably a pretty good strategy just to take our time with that road and do all the drainage and stuff that we need to get it to where it needs to be.
Yep.
So we're actually pretty far along in the program this year, pretty quickly. we've got Brothers Riding that you're gonna go take a look at and make a suggestion.
Yep.
You know, we try to avoid making any final decisions at the workshop meeting. This is really just for us to talk about options and get things on the table and talk about future agenda items. So would this board be comfortable if we're far enough along to approve the road program in 2 weeks at the March meeting? Provided that.
Yes.
Yes, I'd like to hear about Brothers Riding, but I'm assuming that's not an issue. I think the good news is last year you guys did such great work putting this all together. This is kind of just a following of that, and that's why maybe it was a little bit easier. It seemed easier. I can't tell you what all the work that Jeff and Ron did, but it seems a little more straightforward this year.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's
Okay,
a little
so-
more strategic. So Jeff and Ron, you haven't seen anything blow up that you didn't expect?
That I didn't expect, I
Or
would
that
say.
you haven't taken into account?
At this time, I would say no, not that I can think of.
Okay.
So I just, yeah, I guess what the next point would be, as we're driving around the next couple of weeks, if we, take a look at the roads, if you see something, maybe we should consider, let's bring it up. Because again, it's road systems are like living systems. They fall apart and they get old and they fall apart. So just keep our eyes open. Just like to Nancy's point, I think it was actually last year, Schoolhouse blew up on us.
Right.
Right. And so that was one of those end of the winter, and all of a sudden this road, which was fine, just fell apart. So
March is typically the month where you get a lot of that occurring, because we had 70+ degrees today, and Wednesday it's supposed to snow again.
So everything's
God.
expanding and contracting.
Yeah. So it's something, that's why, I wouldn't it's nice to get your bids out early, but if we're going to continue to have that kind of weather pattern in March, maybe you do put off for a couple more weeks before you put the bids out to see what happens in March.
So maybe we wait till the April meeting or to do it.
So I'm okay with that. One of the concerns I have was last year we were.
We were late to the table. Yeah.
I'm okay. My only concern would be last year we were a little late getting the bid package out. And so we were kind of last on the list when it came to actually doing the work.
Right.
So I guess I would default to Ron and Jeff. If you think we'd be safe to make that decision in a week and a half, rather than a month and a half. I would go forward with I would prefer to go forward with what we have, but that I would rest on, I'm one of five, but my suggestion would be, like, if Ron and Jeff are good,
Right.
going at the March meeting, I'm okay.
Yeah, and Ron and I will probably, not to speak, I cannot speak for Ron, but I think over the next week here, we'll have a better idea if that can be done or not.
Okay. All right.
One
So
thing.
it sounds like if it can be done, we bring it to the March meeting. If there's some concerns, then we wait. I can't imagine the whole thing would be blown up. It would be probably something comes in that may be bumping something else out. But I hear what you're saying, Dave. I thought we started the road program really late last year, and I would hate to do that if we didn't have to. So.
Ron, do you have anything, sir?
Well, it doesn't take too long to turn this around to get it ready for bidding. But the individual spreadsheets, the MS 9444, are the sheets that we would use for the bidding for each road, and they're essentially filled out already for these roads. They're in the summary table.
Right.
Okay.
So it doesn't take long to say, oh yeah, we decided to go with this. So if you want to say, we'll shoot for going at the next meeting, and Ron, you and Jeff check out the rest of the roads between now and then. And if you see anything, you can bring it up that night. But otherwise, we can have the bid package ready to approve and go forward.
No, that's great. I'm going to need that stuff. The project will have to be in hand done by the 9th or the 10th to be able to give to the board, Ron,
Okay.
as best we can.
All right.
Good, very good.
Anything else we want to talk about on the road program? Before we move on to public comment?
I'm good.
All right. Thank you, everybody. This was a good discussion. I'm really happy with how straightforward things were this year. It was nice. It was nice driving around with Ron and Jeff on Friday as well. I always enjoy looking at roads.
And we are always happy you want to do it.
All right, so now I'll open up to public comment. This public comment can include comments on anything attendees may want to share. Commenters must state their name and whether they are a township resident or a taxpayer of the township.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name's Mary McVeigh. I'm a township resident. And I have a bunch of comments. Okay, so here we go. I'm very happy that you're looking at Sunset Circle for chip and fog seal. I'm delighted that we are going to be the first case scenario of does this work in the township? I believe this will save our township a lot of money. I've always believed, I believe this last year when I got pushed back beyond belief, but hopefully Sunset Circle will be we'll teach the township, here's how you give your road another 5 or 7 years before we have to put major money into digging it up and repaving it. The other thing I want to say is, I want to know, do we book as early as possible with people? This situation in Ukraine is not going to get better. Of course, the fuel has jumped 50 cents in a week. So we need to, as a township, need to consider book as early as possible, lock in a price that is not what it's going to be a month from now. We have no idea what it's going to be. Lock in as early as we can. Another issue I want to know is, have we done a history of our roads? Like, where are we? Like, I went down to Recycle today and I looked at the road that they did within 3 years, and there was a seam in the middle, cracking. And I thought, do we have a history of this? When did we do that road? Why is this seam cracking in the middle? What do we do about that? I really think that is a huge issue we need to address. Also, when I looked at roads back in the day with Jeff Eastburn, we were told by a person who had 50 years experience on roads, look at your best roads first. Are we doing that? Are we looking at our best roads and how we maintain them? And then, of course, the roads you have to maintain because they blew up. And then after that, do we have that strategy? Because I looked at Peace Hill Road and the road into the township, and I thought, we got to do something about it. There's a crack in the middle of the road. Do we have a plan for that? I don't know. Other thing, I don't know. I would like to see from the Board of Supervisors a plan of, here's what we want to do with our roads, here's what we have done with our roads, and here's our progress, because it's so much money we spend on our roads, as you know. And I put my heart and soul into this the last year and a half I was on the board. But yeah, and it's not going to get cheaper. It's the cost of fuel is accelerating. Who knows when it will end? Hopefully soon, but maybe not. So I would really like the board to address that to the citizens. Like, what do you plan on doing about this? Yeah, like X number of roads, here's what we did, here's what we're going to do, and we go from there. Can anybody address that?
Mary,
Yeah,
did you-
sure. So for the first part, regarding the history of the roads and the road status, the robotics map, which we will present at the Board of Supervisors meeting, will give you the road health snapshot of where we're at.
Dave, I'm sorry to interrupt you. How old is that robotics?
1
3
year,
years?
1 year old.
Oh,
We did it
no,
last year.
no, more than that, Dave. Come on.
We did the robotics 2020.
Okay,
2020.
can you do me a favor when you come to the supervisor meeting? Can you give me the date for that? Because it's at least 2 years, maybe.
Yeah, it's
3.
2020. So last year we did the first roads, right? And then this year, we're wrapping up the list of roads that we can work on. And so those are the roads that are blowing up or are in the worst shape now that need to get fixed. As far as getting things done early, we've really tried to accelerate this year. So rather than wait until April to get our road program started, we're trying to get it done this month. We can't really do it much earlier because in the middle of the winter, things are blowing up. So you have to wait until after the bad weather. So that's why we start our road bid project now, right, in March, once the winter is behind us and the plowing's behind us.
Well, Dave, excuse
And
me.
so,
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
listen, Mary,
Now, wait
let
a
me,
minute, Dave, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but do you believe the winter is going to be more disruptive to our roads than the summer when we have these extreme flooding, hellacial rains? I mean, I'm not sure what you see, but the past 2 years, the summers have been way worse on our roads and flooding and rocks all over the roads. And you tell me, what do you see? That's what I see.
I think I just answered your question. We tend to see much of the road damage happening in the winter months. And so we're going to try and get these early as possible. But the other thing is you also have to look at when townships or when PennDOT allows for road work to be done. So the road work must be done in the spring and the summer. So as much as I would like to start a road program in the spring and summer, you can't do it because they're not going to have the bid package and the timing, right? So they have to be on the roads, fixing the roads in the months that you're saying that the roads are blowing up. So it's very difficult.
If I could just add something, I do think that last year we were a little bit behind the 8 ball because we were switching everything. We were going from a 5-year contract to looking at new vendors with different equipment. I think Ron helped us tremendously in getting a very good paver. Obviously, they went through the bidding process and won, but a paver who was quite booked up at that time. I think we're in a better position now. So, Mary, I totally agree. We don't want to get on the back foot, but I think, I think we're better prepared to get our dates set with whoever wins the bids, and we have a relationship building with a different paver, which is great. I do have to agree, Mary. Last year, the roads absolutely exploded with these summer storms, but there's nothing we can do about that. All we can do is set aside money and think, well, we may have to spend more money in the summer than we ever expected in the past. I mean, it's been just unbelievable. But I don't know. I don't know what else. I do agree that it's really hard to know right now how long we can expect roads to last because A, the weather, but B, the methods we've used, I don't know if they were the best methods. I think the less seams you have in a road, the better. And I have seen, I drive Walker and I drive Peacedale, and I don't know if those roads have held up as typical or not, but that's where Ron can help us. And he can kind of say, hey, this road isn't holding up as long as I think you would have expected it to. So, maybe we need to put that on the 5 years from now plan or the 7 years from now, or maybe that's where we tar and chip or whatever. But I certainly hear your frustration.
Nancy, I agree with you. I was very frustrated leaving I went to the recycle bins today. I'm coming out. You can picture the drive out to Appleton Road, and the seam in the middle of the road was cracking. And I thought, oh my, I don't know what we do about that, but we have to decide what we need to do about that to preserve that road that we repaired within the past couple years. And that's where I would, as you say, Nancy, call on Ron Reagan. What do we do? Do we put, I don't know what we do to that road, but we need to, I think the one thing I learned, which I know nothing about paving roads, but the one thing I learned about roads was look at your best roads and keep them your best roads. And then you have to deal with the bad roads that blew up over the summer or the winter or whatever. You have to deal with that. And then you deal with the other roads that, okay, they're up for routine maintenance, but deal with your best roads and keep them your best roads. I just would like to know that that's where our board wants to go. Like that's what you want to do. And I'd like to see that plan. I'd like to see that plan going forward.
All right, thank you, Mary. Any other public comment before we move to adjournment?
Yes, I'd like to say something, please.
Okay. Is Jim Durazio?
Yes, sir. With listening to everything that was going on here today, I can understand the concerns. I can't argue what's said. But at the same time, if you look at Gypsy Hill Road, where you had the single paver go through, that is also starting to separate. You go back to the other roads that like Malloy have done. Even you go back to Alan Myers, you're going to have the same things. The things that were brought up tonight, I understand the concern. I can appreciate it. But, you look at what Alan Myers did on 41 from Cochranville to Ackland, that's already got potholes in it. And that was just started last year. And this is their second time. I think Ron can appreciate that you can't see everything that's underground that will dictate what your road does. You do the best that you can. You make your best decision, but not every decision is the right decision.
All right, thank you, Jim. Any other public comment? All right. So I make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting at 8:02 p.m.
I second that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, David.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. All right, motion carries 5-0. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you. See everybody.
See you later.